What's up, folks? Merry Christmas. It's a little after midnight on Christmas Eve, so technically it's Christmas. And from here at the channel, Jorge and Ito, from me and Addy, we want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. And thanks for coming back to our 7th and final episode of How the Devil Tried to Steal Christmas. In episode 6, we talked about the angel's announcement to the shepherds of all people. And so at this point, we're going to consider King Herod, the wise men, and the flight to Egypt. And this is episode 7, called Royal Paranoia and the Killing of the Innocents. And it is indeed the most sad and most depraved item on our list so far. But starting in Matthew chapter 2 and chapter 2 verse 1. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, the Magi came from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose, and have come to worship him. And when Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And he assembled all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, and he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They told him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. And then Herod the king summoned the Magi secretly, and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may come too and worship him. After listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them, until it came to rest over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother. They fell down and they worshipped him. Then opening their treasures, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and of myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to King Herod, they departed to their own country by another route. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, Rise, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. And he rose and took the child and his mother by night, and departed to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet, Out of Egypt I called my son. Then King Herod, when he had saw that he had been tricked by the Magi, he became furious, and he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem, and in all the region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. This was fulfilled what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be comforted because they are no more. But when Herod the king died, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Rise, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the child's life are dead." And he rose and took the child and his mother and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there, and being warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee. And he went and lived in a city called Nazareth, that what was spoken by the prophets might be fulfilled: "He shall be called a Nazarene." Now, we spoke in episode 2 about Christmas and Revelation, about how John is presenting to us this cosmological signage, celestial constellations that we are familiar with today, like Scorpio, Virgo, and he's basically telling us that this was present in the skies during the time of Christ, and this was what the Magi would have saw. And then we see that they're referring to a star. King Herod asked them, at what point did you see this supposed star? It said that he ascertained this time and place from them. And so the Magi, they do at first give Herod this piece of information. And so at first, King Herod tricked them. But then Herod says, when you do actually go and find the kid, come back and let me know so that I can go worship him too. And so what we have here is a king who is paranoid to lose his throne. He's afraid that not only his throne, but his line, his kingly line, those who would succeed the throne, that would be compromised. He was afraid his kingly succession would be compromised, and so he had tricked the Magi once before. Hey, let's give it another go. Well, they are a little bit wiser than that. They are considered the wise men. In fact, in this translation, it does read the wise men, but it was actually the Magi. And we know from biblical scholarship that they came from the east and from Babylon, most likely. But they do go and they find Jesus, and he is a child by now. But this is still considered part of the Christmas story. In the nativity scene, we see the three wise men, or sometimes they're referred to as the three kings, but they are the Magi. And it doesn't say that there was 3 of them in the text at all. It just says a band of Magi came. It could have been loads of them, just a caravan of Magi coming from Bethlehem to worship the king, the divine king. Now Herod is a little salty because they're talking about a king that is prophesied. That's the king they're looking for, but King Herod is the king. So obviously he's scared, he's paranoid, and if you look at some of the primary sources on Herod the Great, the king of Judea, you'll find that he was a paranoid individual anyway. This was late in his life. He only lived a year or so after this event, or after this account, and then he passed away. But the thing with him was he had a lot of sons by a lot of different wives. You can look this up on yourself. We have more primary source material on Herod the Great than any other historical person of antiquity. And so we have a lot of stuff on him, and we read a lot of crappy things that he did. At one point, he planned to have many Jewish leaders slaughtered in this stadium. The plan was thwarted, thank God, but he did try to execute a lot of Jewish leaders at one point in his life. But anyway, the one we're concerned with is is what scholars refer to, and what theologians, early church fathers refer to as the massacre of the innocents, or the killing of the innocents. And so it could be argued that the text reads that all children were killed under the age of 2. And so, a lot of times, and some translations say the boys under 2 years of age, which would make sense because, Jesus being the foretold king, girls wouldn't have been considered, a king. But the text reads that all the children under 2, were killed. So, just to make sure that he got the right child, he just went ahead and ordered the massacre of the whole lot of them. Not only in Bethlehem, the foretold town of the child, but in the surrounding regions. So this was a massacre on what we would consider a large scale, but when you consider the area at the time, these were small rural towns, and so there may not have actually been that many baby boys or just toddlers 2 years old and under. There may not have been that many that were slaughtered, but it doesn't matter. If it was just one that was killed, it would still be a devastating thing. And indeed, it said that he killed every child under the age of 2, just to make sure that he got the right one. Is indeed the most sad part of the story. But you'll remember back in Revelation 12, where we talked about the virgin in the sky and the dragon, waiting to devour the child. And here we read something in the text that says to the effect, well, I'll just read it verbatim. The angel appeared to Joseph and said, "Rise, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I give you further instructions, because Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." And so this is, now we're getting into the flight to Egypt. But like I was saying, you recall that the dragon lay in wait to devour the child, and now we see just this scene play out in Matthew, that Herod was to search for this child, specifically to destroy it, to devour it. They end up going down to Egypt, which psychologically had to be tough on Mary and Joseph. If you'll remember in the Old Testament, Egypt was the land of slavery, the land of bondage for the Hebrews. And so to have to return back to a place of such heartbreak and, such pain and just the mental anguish that they had to bear, that their ancestors, suffered at the hands of the Egyptians, to have to go there and hide out. And thank God that they were safe down there. But just being in that area, having to return to the land of bondage, just so your child's life is not sought and killed over here in your own homeland. It would have been traumatic. And again, Egypt is a long ways off from Bethlehem and Judea. It's a long way, so it's a long travel. They stayed there at least a year, because Herod dies in 4 BC. That's a historical fact. And so they do end up coming back. One of Herod's sons does take the throne, and Joseph is scared of it. So he moves up to Galilee in northern Israel and stays there. And so, we have the killing of the innocents. We have the flight to Egypt, the land of bondage. And it's just the whole Christmas story from beginning to end. It's just a rough way to go for Mary and Joseph and even Jesus, after he was born. And something happened the other day. I would say divine providence, but one of the scholars that I rely heavily on for just solid scriptural doctrine and exegesis of Scripture um, is a great expositor, Dr. Michael Heiser. He's a Hebrew scholar and had vast studies in the ancient Near East. He's authored several books, The Unseen Realm being his main one, which was part of his dissertation in grad school. But anyway, on capturing Christianity, just the other day, Cameron of Capturing Christianity had Dr. Michael Heiser on as a guest, and it was a live Q&A. So I got my chance to ask the question that I've been wanting to ask for a long time, because Dr. Heiser does, he does a lot of work with the virgin birth and the whole Christmas scene in Revelation chapter 12, and I posed this question. I'm going to leave a link to the video in the description with the timestamp of the question that I posed to him, and this is what I asked. I said, Dr. Heiser, do you see all the oddities and the setbacks and the mishaps of the Christmas story? And I named a few examples, like the supposed adultery of Mary and the ramifications, no room in the inn, the flight to Egypt, the killing of the kids. I said, do you see all of these mishaps and oddities as being connected to attacks of the enemy, like the dragon attacking the people of God in Revelation? And the short answer was yes. He does see dragon activity or satanic activity in some of these items, and he said especially in the flight to Egypt, because there is a direct linkage between Jesus and the Exodus story. I'm going to leave the link to that video with the timestamp, and you can hear his response, and he gives a thorough, thought-out response. He starts out by saying he's going to try to be quick about it, and then just ends up unpacking all of this. And it was just confirmation that, this entire Christmas project that I've been doing, this 7 videos in total, was not all in vain. And the point is not to glorify the devil in any way, but the point is to glorify God and His work to bring us salvation. At Christmas we get tied up, the hustle and bustle and the gift giving and the reaching deep into the pockets to buy for everybody, and we just sort of forget that, sometimes we just need to reflect back on why we celebrate Christmas anyway, and it's to celebrate the birth of the Savior who would bring salvation to the masses, to you and to me. And for that I'm thankful for. And I just want to give God praise and thanks. And I want to thank you for joining me on this playlist, on this project, How the Devil Tried to Steal Christmas. There's a lot of items that I left out that I didn't touch on. I wanted this to be concise as possible. And so maybe next year we'll dig a little deeper and we'll revisit this material and sort of unearth some other things. But in the meantime, thanks for coming over. Merry Christmas. We'll see you back here again next time. Jorge Anito signing out. God bless.